Ladies and gentlemen, this is ScaryBad Reviews, and this is my intro.
Oh shit. Here we go again.
Alright, so it has been a very long time since I have been recording. This semester has been extremely hectic. It's been all over the place, and I'm back over into summer mode, so I'm going to have a lot more time to be able to see everything that I possibly can and be able to talk about it a lot more frequently than I have in the past. Um, of course, there's been a ton of stuff that has happened since I last recorded. Um, you had Aquaman ending up being one of the most financially successful movies of all time. You had DC kind of rerouting all of their plans. Shazam being successful, which I'll actually review Shazam next week. Um, Captain Marvel being successful and setting up this massive opening for Endgame, which I'm going to talk about in a second. Um, and it really has been a long time, so I'm going to kind of try to focus on news that's, very recent within like the past 2 weeks. And I can go ahead and kick that off with the fact that um, Endgame is going to be one of the most like historic theater experiences that we've ever seen. In that, um, just the sheer number of people who are planning on seeing it, as as well as the fact that the people who are seeing it have been waiting for it for so long. I think that when you get into a theater that's full of dedicated fans, it's going to be a viewing experience that we haven't really seen in a very long time. Um, Possibly similar to a Star Wars Episode 6, or I mean, even Infinity War was a theater experience in that, we had kind of waited for this massive amount of characters to come together and really be able to see how they can interact and, communicate with each other when they have to all join forces against one evil. But this is even bigger than Infinity War in that this is the end of, I mean, 12 years and 20 plus movies worth of, like foreshadowing and storytelling, and almost it almost feels like all those movies at this point are now exposition for this movie. Um, so I think that being able to go see this and be a part of this is bigger than just going and watching a movie. And just talking about the sheer numbers alone of it, pre-sale, not even when tickets were actually released for sale, I'm talking about like pre-order pre-sale numbers in the United States alone was like close to 4 or 500 million. Worldwide, it was close. It was 990 million. They almost made $1 billion just based off of pre-order sales alone. Um, so this movie, I think, while a lot of people thought that Infinity War would have a really good shot at knocking Avatar off of its throne of sitting at $2.7 billion made, Infinity War fell short. Infinity War stopped, I believe, around 2.1 billion. The original Avengers stopped around like 2.1 billion. I really think that Endgame has a shot. Like they are sitting at like 1.4 billion before the movie has actually come out to the general public. I mean, it's they are. I think they're going to do it. I mean, if there's any movie that can take down that number, then it's going to be this. I don't see anything in the near future. I don't even see Star Wars Episode 9 coming close to that. I think that Episode 9 may top out at 1.5 billion. I think that there's a little bit of fatigue and a little bit of kind of disdain when it comes to that trilogy of Star Wars. I think that a lot of people had a sour taste in their mouth after Episode 7 and 8. So I don't think that that movie will get as high of numbers as it could have if 7 and 8 had gone better. While I like those two films, a lot of people and a lot of longtime fans of the series didn't necessarily enjoy the plot lines that were being introduced. But if anything has a shot at really cracking that 2.7 billion number, it's going to be this. And I think it is. I think it's going to crack 3. I honestly think that it's going to crack 3 billion. I think it's going to be just absolutely absurd. I don't think that there's going to be a theater that's even close to empty at showtime for this movie for a month. I mean, I think that people are just going to repeatedly file in just to experience this as much as they possibly can. And there were a lot of people who kind of, there was a meme for a while with it, and there were a lot of people who were kind of being serious in it, in that the movie's 3 hours long. And I understand people's, ideas and justification for a possible intermission in the middle of the movie. I get it. 3 hours is a long time, and it's like, okay, well, what if I need to use the restroom? And I get that that's a legitimate complaint because you don't want to spend money on something and then miss out on an important part of it. But at the same time, if you would have told us that a movie was 3 hours long and we would have waited this long for it back before Netflix, Hulu, and streaming were around, I don't think anybody would have had this complaint. I don't think anybody would have had this idea because of the fact that now we can watch movies so easily and at our own, pace. People are used to waiting for big movies to come on streaming and then being able to pause it whenever, and it's caused this separation and this inability to separate rather between a theater experience and a streaming experience. I mean, I get that it's tough to hold everything in for 3 hours. 3 hours is a long time. I get it. But at the same time, you just need to prepare yourself to be able to sit for that long. I mean, I don't know. I understand the justification behind the point. I don't necessarily think. I think it's a luxury that we've adapted to from having Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime and all this. I don't think that it would have been necessary for them to include an intermission. I understand that there are people with medical conditions that may need to use the restroom, and that does kind of suck. Um, I could understand it. I would have been fine with a 5 to 10 minute intermission at some point in the movie. I really thought that they were going to do it for a while, but at the same time, I'm fine with them not having it in there. I think that I'll be okay in my viewing experience to be able to sit for the 3 hours in a row and really take in everything I possibly can. Um, and that again, that was kind of interesting just to see the influence that streaming has really had on the theater experience, and that people aren't people are getting upset that a studio would expect them to sit for that long, and it's like, yeah, they did it with Lord of the Rings, they did it with Star Wars, they did it with King Kong, they did it there's been so many movies that are that long that I don't remember there being backlash over their length until streaming services made them more readily available and people understood how long they were. I don't, like I said, I don't want to necessarily pick a side here. I would have been happy with an intermission, and I'm still happy without it. I don't think the studio needed to be pressured into adding an intermission and adding time onto their movie, but it could have been a good idea. It could have maybe added a couple more people to go see it. I don't think it's going to harm the film at all. Like I said, I think this bad boy's going to crack 3 billion. I think it's really going to do it. I think, and it's going to stand as the record for almost ever. I mean, because I don't know of a theater experience that's going to come close to this. I really don't know any cinematic universe, any movie that's going to come close to this movie when it comes to the experience and the history behind this showing and just what's built into it and what this is finally bringing together. Switching gears a little bit, just kind of talking about a little bit more of the awards side of movies. There's been some back and forth with the Academy Awards and a couple different situations that they kind of got themselves into, with Roma winning awards at the Oscars and various other film festivals and stuff like that. There was kind of a big pushback from purists that movies exclusive to streaming services shouldn't be eligible for Oscars. First of all, that's bullshit. It's utter bullshit. Just because a movie isn't made by a big budget studio that's released in theaters, streaming services are another manner of mass distribution. So I don't understand the justification of saying, oh, that movie was made for Netflix or that movie's on Netflix, it can't be a good movie. I think that's super purist. It's super snobby. It's super highbrow. I think that that's utter bullshit and that it needs to stop. There are some quality films that are coming out of these streaming service studios that these people on the Academy are paying attention to and even giving awards, like I just said with Roma. And so people who are butthurt because they didn't win an award because a Netflix movie beat them out, if a Netflix movie beats you out and their budget is that much lower than yours, then what the fuck were you doing with all your money? Like, if you want to say, oh, those movies are made in a simplistic fashion, oh, this, oh, that, maybe use the money that you're getting from your studio and make a better fucking movie. Like, don't, like, I think that it's absolutely asinine for these directors and producers and writers and everybody to complain that they have, better competition. It's like, you're going to be held to higher film standards. We're not going to be getting shitty movies from you guys anymore if you feel this, pressure, and if you feel them breathing down your neck. I mean, like, there's Netflix movies that are trying to close the gap between them and theater movies. I mean, like I said, even all the way back to my last podcast back in January, that, Netflix denied Sony that they didn't want to buy Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly's shitty Holmes and Watson movie. Like, the adamancy of, I don't even know if that's a word, just the backbone of Netflix and the gall of them to be able to deny a major production studio, like, just kind of showed everyone, hey, they're not fucking around anymore. Like, they're making good movies. They do have a threshold in some situations. Now, mind you, there's a lot of shit on Netflix and Hulu that they made as their actual original content. There's a lot of shit on there that really just sucks. I've seen a lot of it. It's terrible. But at the same time, on their higher end, they are making good stuff, and they are actually acquiring distribution rights for good movies that won't be able to seem to make it. Like, to me, The Ritual should have gotten an American release in theaters. I think that movie could have very well succeeded in all across the country, but at the time, it was not going to succeed in theaters overseas. And so Netflix said, we understand what's in front of us. Let us put it on our platform. Let us distribute it, and then we'll see the reaction that it garners. And, I haven't met a horror fan yet who doesn't like the movie, and I've said before, it's honestly one of my favorite movies of all time. I think that it kind of brought to life this creature that most people don't know about, and it's one of the most unique creature designs ever. But it angers me that they were so for banning Netflix movies, but then recently, within the past week, the Academy established any of the changes that they're going to have going into next year's awards, and they were very firm in the idea that Netflix movies will still be able to be nominated for awards at their show, which I think is good. I think that's the Academy, kind of pushing back against the directors and everyone and saying, hey, they're making good movies. And the reason we gave this movie an award is because his movie was better than yours. It's not because, oh, we want to push the forefront of streaming services. Oh, we're being paid by streaming services. It's not because of any of that. It's because his movie was genuinely better than yours from start to finish. So you got two options. Either keep complaining and not winning awards, or step your fucking game up and beat out these small studio productions. But it is good to see that the Academy is kind of pushing back against that. The Academy also made a small tweak to the name of one of their awards, which I think actually has a better meaning behind it than most people think. Originally, they had a category that was Best Foreign Language Film, which was kind of centrist to American, movie culture. It was kind of lumping in the rest of the world, and it really felt kind of standoffish, that it was just like, oh, foreign language film, like, these people probably have never seen these. But they renamed the category into Best International Feature Film, and I think that kind of puts a more positive spin on the award. I think it feels less exclusive. I think that it definitely will help bring to light some of the foreign films that succeed each year, because as soon as there are a lot of Americans that see, foreign language film and don't want to watch it because there's a lot of Americans that don't enjoy watching movies with subtitles. I'm on the exact opposite of the spectrum, wherein I don't watch most things unless I can put subtitles on them. I feel like, at any given moment, you could not hear something because of a noise around you or simply because of the audio on the movie or the TV, and I don't feel like missing things. in movies because of bad audio or things happening around me, so I almost always have subtitles on. But there's a lot of people who don't, and when they don't want to watch a movie with subtitles, they're never going to watch anything that's in a foreign language. So I do think that it's a good move for the Oscars to rebrand that award, and really just kind of continue to make that award inclusive and bring it in with the rest of the show. Um, Other news I wanted to cover, the trailer and the posters have come out for Midsommar, which is from Ari Aster, who did Hereditary. Since my last podcast, I have officially now watched Hereditary twice. That shit's some of the scariest. That's one of the scariest movies I've seen in a very long time. That movie also has one of the truest depictions of grief that I've ever seen. I'm probably going to cover it in a small review within the next few weeks just because of the impact that it had on me. But his new movie that's coming out over the summer, called Midsommar, has shown its first posters and its first trailer, and it looks super fucking creepy. Like, it looks like I saw someone use this to describe something else. It's like coat of paint horror, where like everything just seems like kind of off most of the time, but it's positive enough that like you let it slide. And I think this is like coat of paint and like cult horror. I am very excited for it. The cinematography looks super deliberate. The color schemes that he's using in it, he's using all pastels. All the scenes are very bright. And if you can successfully scare someone with a super bright movie, then you know that you're a successful horror director. I mean, if you can pull that off, you are good. Like, you're a great, and you need to be remembered. Um, but yeah, it does look very promising to me. I've seen the trailer about like 5 or 6 times now, and each time I'm like, man, I can't wait to get in and go see it. And I really hope that it does kind of hold up and feel the same way that Hereditary felt. Because I don't know if I felt the same way that Hereditary made me feel from a movie in a long time. I mean, there's been a couple here and there that I've talked about before that are like, okay, this is really creepy and I really enjoy this. But, I mean, Hereditary was exceptional. Like, I loved that movie. And I will definitely see to it that I give you guys a more full scale review of it. Um, Another thing that I saw on social media within the past 2 weeks is that Scott Derrickson, who is the father of the movie Doctor Strange, he shared out on social media. Excuse me. He shared out on social media his promo art for the evolution of Lucifer in his Paradise Lost movie that he was going to make that had recently got shut down. And just looking at this promo art, like, I want so bad to just be able to throw money at him and be like, make this movie and make it now. I mean, it's futuristic, borderline alien looking, but it just looks so beautiful, and it looks so much like something that would have just popped on screen and would have been phenomenal. And then pairing the designs of it with voice actors for the characters, I mean, it would have been. I would have loved to see this movie actually get made, and this promo art is just awesome to me. Like, I have it saved in my phone, and it kind of sucked because I looked at it and I was like, this is incredible, and then I realized I was like, he's showing us this because it's never going to happen. But I definitely would like to see someone act upon it. I actually had this conversation on Twitter with an old high school classmate yesterday that he did a very good job at bringing in some psychological thriller and horror visuals and elements into the story of Doctor Strange, which I really appreciated. I think that Doctor Strange definitely is within my top 5 for Marvel in their cinematic universe so far. I think that it did a good job at bringing to life a character that's very difficult to describe and display in cinematic settings because of how wild and vivid and just crazy the visuals are in his comics. I don't think it's very easy to be able to, you know, show those visually on a movie without them looking like shitty CGI, and it really didn't. I mean, the movie was very CGI laden, of course, but it all looked unique, it all looked crisp, and it all looked very good. So it was very sad for me to see this awesome promo art that's not going to be acted upon. The last little bit of news that I wanted to cover today was American Horror Story released their theme for their ninth season. I have to say, I haven't finished Cult. I haven't finished Apocalypse. I watched each of those about halfway through and then kind of got fatigued on them both. I don't think AHS has really gotten the dedication and the fan base and the strength that it had behind it since Hotel. I think when Roanoke came out. Now, while I really enjoyed Roanoke when I finally turned around to watch it, I don't really think that they've had strength and support like they did when they started out since season 5, since Hotel. I mean, I really think that it's just kind of been uh, leaving, and people are tired of them continually making similar things. Um, this season does not look promising, and it's weird for me to say as a true horror fan. The season is being labeled as 1984. The teaser trailer that they gave us, that's a minute long, has really big like summer camp, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street type slasher vibes. Um, I get it, and I'm happy that someone is kind of putting some new, I don't know. It's just the whole thing, the whole American Horror Story thing feels tired. They have actors who were mainstays in the show leaving because they're tired of doing it. Evan Peters isn't going to be in this season because the character they made him play in Cult made him almost kill himself. Like, it's getting to be repetitive, it's getting to be too much, and it's just not enjoyable anymore. And I think that after Apocalypse didn't get the numbers that I think they expected it to get, they should have said, hey, we're going to can the rest of this. We've gotten our money. Let's take the money and run. In 5 years, let's make our crew, our actors, everybody else the same. Let's make an anthology movie. Let's make an hour, 45-minute movie that's got like 4 stories really quick to it. Like, I think that would have benefited them more than trying to continue the TV show. And at the same time, this kind of worries me because they've already greenlit season 10 after the first 2 episodes of season 8. So we're going to get another season of it unless this one super bombs, which I don't think it's going to. I think there's still going to be people who watch it just out of desperation to find horror television. But it just looks bad. Like, it doesn't look good, and I'm really kind of sad because for something that was so strong as it was through Murder House, while Murder House is not my favorite season, it's still good horror television. You had Murder House. Then you had Asylum, which is one of the best examples of horror television that you can show to anybody. Then you had Coven, which I didn't watch at first and then went back and watched and loved every second of it. Then you have Freak Show, which is possibly my favorite season of any television show ever. I mean, I loved Freak Show from top to bottom. Um, and then Hotel was better than I wanted to give it credit for. After like my third watch through of Hotel, I started to pick up, okay, this isn't as bad as I originally thought, but those first 4 seasons came out of the gate so strong, and they had such a following behind them and such a dedicated fan base. And they've just kept extending this and expecting them to continually support them when quality is going down. And I think that people are tired of it. I really hope that this season doesn't do well. And I hate being like that. Most of the time, I'm usually supportive of horror movies. There are certain situations where I'm like, this may be damaging to the industry. I don't want it to do as well. I really hope this season doesn't do very well because I don't think it deserves to do well. I don't think they should have a reason to continue this show. Um, it's just frustrating to me seeing all the fans and all the dedicated fan base just like get shit on and say, "Hey, we found a really bad idea and we're going to go ahead and work on it, and whatever you guys say, we're not going to care at all." Like, it's super frustrating for me to see it go down this way, and I really feel bad because Evan Peters is such a great actor and he's done such a great job with this show, and they really just kind of threw his health to the side when he was playing the character Kai in Cult. Like, they really just didn't care that he was going through some shit trying to play the character. They just said, you're playing this character well. We don't really care what happens off screen. And he got to the point of where he said, hey, I have to take a season off. Fuck you guys. I can't do this. It's really disappointing to see where that series is going. And like I said, I hope that soon they take the money and run and then come back a couple years later, possibly make an anthology movie or maybe like a short season or a miniseries or something like that. But it is extremely disappointing to me to see that this is where the ninth season is going and that they're really just kind of giving up. Alright, so I kind of wanted to cover just a topic that kind of pertains to the idea of the interaction of the theater experience with streaming services, and that's the two movies that I'm going to be reviewing for you today are Us and Pet Semetary. Pet Semetary was a good theater experience. I enjoyed my time there. The movie was very good. I'll get into my reviews in a little bit, but when I went to see Jordan Peele's Us, and then not too long afterwards I went to see Shazam, the theater experiences were subpar, and I really just, I kind of want to talk about it because it's a really difficult thing to talk about with certain people, because there's some people who are like, oh dude, it's just a movie, you'll be able to watch it whenever, when it comes out on DVD or on streaming services, and I think that's kind of bullshit. If you're going to see a movie, especially with another person, you guys have both paid and in the vicinity of $7 to even upwards of $14 for that movie ticket. Everyone else in the theater paid the same amount of money that you did. So I just I don't comprehend and I don't understand the logic in someone's head of, I'm going to pay like $7 to $14 to go sit in a movie theater and annoy everyone else in the theater. Like, I don't understand, especially when I went and saw Jordan Peele's Us. I understand that there were elements of the movie that were supposed to be funny. I understand that there were elements of the movie that weren't, that seemed goofy. I get it. Not everything in the movie was perfect. I'm going to hit that in my review in a little bit. I understand that there may be some stuff that's like, oh, why is that happening? But sitting in a theater that you specifically paid more money for, because it's a theater that happened to have recliners in it, which I thought was pretty cool, by the way. But like, paying that much money to go sit in a movie theater and laugh and make fun of parts of the movie out loud to a point of where the 30 other people in the theater can obviously hear every word that you're saying, continually making jokes to the person who's with you, audibly, not trying to, lower your voice or anything, continually allowing your phone to go off in the movie. It's just, I don't understand the thought process. I don't understand the point of paying money to go not enjoy a movie and then make other people not enjoy the movie either. And hell, those people might like the movie, but they're not going to know because they're so pissed off at you sitting in front just causing a fucking scene. Like, it's just, it made me so mad the night of, because I did enjoy certain aspects of the movie, but it was just so, like, infuriating to me that someone just said, hey, let me pay $13 for this movie ticket and then go act like a goddamn fool in the front of the theater so that everyone else has to experience what I'm doing. Like, it's, and especially with horror movies, because of how much tension is supposed to be built within a horror movie, especially with how horror movies can miss their mark. I mean, I get laughing at certain parts that are supposed to be scary that don't end up being scary. I understand that. But doing it at every single moment of the movie is bullshit. It's absolute bullshit for you to sit there and laugh at every single aspect of the movie that you know is not supposed to be funny, and you're still going to laugh at it anyway, so that everyone in the theater can hear you laughing and think that you're such a badass because you're not getting scared by this shit. Like, great. I'm not fucking scared by it either. Alright? I've seen a lot of this. I enjoy this movie. There aren't very many movies that get to me. I don't say that in a braggadocious way. I'm just saying I enjoy the idea of the search of movies to actually scare me. Like, being in a theater and, like, laughing at someone dying in a horror movie, if it's a goofy ass death, if we're talking, like, Friday the 13th Part 7, or, like, Nightmare on Elm Street Dream Warriors, or Chucky, I get laughing at that because there is an element of really fucked up comedy to it. That's why they go as far as they go. But if it's a normal death scene, or, like, even a little bit more of a gruesome death scene, the proper reaction isn't really to laugh or to like yell at the top of your lungs in the theater, "Oh, he got that bitch." Like don't pay money to come act like a jackass in a theater when other people paid money too. Like, you are outnumbered by the amount of money that was paid to enjoy the movie versus the money that you paid to act like a goddamn fool. Like, it just made me so mad at the time being like it's just bullshit that people would spend money to do that. When I went and saw Shazam, it was a little bit different. It was a little bit more innocent of a situation. I didn't think that Shazam was a movie that you would take little kids to. I think that there was a lot of adult aspects to the movie, especially kids younger than like 5. Like, a lot of times I'm not too keen on taking a kid younger than 5 years old to a movie theater anyway. And I don't mean that to be a dickhead. I don't mean that to be like exclusive of a community to see a movie in a theater. I understand that it's an experience that everyone should be able to enjoy. But aside from like definitive animated children's movies, I find myself difficult to accept children of a certain age in a movie, especially one like Shazam. Shazam had a decent amount of, I mean, it's a superhero movie, so of course there's going to be some form of violence, but Shazam's villains in the Seven Deadly Sins were pretty like nasty designs. Like, I enjoyed them very much because I felt that they were very horror inspired, but like some of the humor in the movie is of course not for children, and the villains really were designed for an adult audience, and I really think that they could have been scary as shit for kids. I mean, I really think that that could have impacted them. So I wasn't super happy about there being like little kids in the theater for that. And of course, you have some kids asking questions like, "Oh, who's that? Who's this? Why are they doing that?" You have little kids that don't want to sit down. They want to move around. They want to move their feet. They want to bang on the back of your chair. They don't always necessarily, cover their mouths when they cough or sneeze or anything. Like, I don't know. It may just be me being an asshole and being a dickhead about kids being in the theater, but I was just like, there's got to be a certain point where you kind of cut off an age. Like, if they're this young, don't take them to see the movie in the theater. But again, that's just me, and I just kind of wanted to get off my chest these two theater experiences because, and with Pet Semetary too, my girlfriend and I went to go see Pet Semetary together, and when we got there, we had, seats that were in a really good spot that I had picked out, as the Alamo in Winchester does assigned seating for their tickets, and we had been sitting there, and we sat through about 2 of the previews, and then we alerted because at the Alamo they can bring you out food and drinks and such, we alerted our waiter that we kind of wanted to move down a row or two because like 2 seats over from my girlfriend was a couple who had done nothing but just make out since the lights went down. And I'm like, I know that used to be a thing, and I know that still probably is a thing for a lot of people. I don't understand it really either. I don't understand that aspect of a movie theater either. I don't see why you need to pay, like I said earlier, upwards of $14 to go make out in a public place with other people. I don't understand the romantic appeal to that, and I don't understand like any of the appeal to it. So, but I was very happy. The Alamo was very, accommodating. The waiter came back out like 5 minutes later and was like, "Hey, we reassigned your tickets. You guys are You guys are 2 rows down, and the closest people to you are two high school girls who are just like here to see the movie. Like, you won't have to worry about that anymore." And we were like, "Oh, awesome, thank you." And so we moved down, and it wasn't a problem anymore. But it's just like I don't understand why people want to do that. I don't know why people want to spend $30 on two tickets to not see the movie. But I just kind of wanted to get off my chest the theater experiences that I've had recently. I hope that my next couple theater experiences are, even the slightest bit better. I plan on seeing Hellboy soon. I plan, of course, I'm going to see Endgame tomorrow. So I really hope that, good theater experiences come out of seeing these movies and that I don't end up in the same boat as I have over the past couple times.
Hi, welcome to Chili's.
Alright, so getting into our next segment here, we have a full scale review of Jordan Peele's Us. Now, I think that in reviewing Us, that a lot of people felt disappointed about the movie, not necessarily because of the actual movie itself. Rather, people were expecting something at the level of Get Out, something culturally and socially at the level of Get Out. And I think that it was unfair to expect that in this case because Jordan Peele, himself said this is a horror movie. He said this is not going to be a cultural examination or a social statement like Get Out was. He said this is going to be me making a horror movie. And I think that he did that very well. I think that he kind of put a little bit of a science fiction twist onto the slasher genre. Oh, why can't I talk? The slasher genre, and did it successfully. I mean, the story that he puts along with it works very well, and I think it's kind of cool. I don't want to get into too many spoilers right now as we're still in our spoiler-free section, but I gave the movie a 7.5. I think it did things very well. I think that it held tension at points better than most people think that it did. I think the music choice throughout the movie was awesome. I think the family worked very well together. I think Lupita Nyong'o's portrayal of her own doppelganger was incredible, and the amount of effort that she put into that character's voice shouldn't go unnoticed, and I think it was kind of bullshit that she received backlash for it. It's like, but I think the movie did very well. I think there was a good mix of tension. I think there was a little bit too much goofiness at parts. I think it got really dangerously close to the edge of being a black comedy. Now, when I say black comedy, I don't refer to a race as I don't refer to racial aspects of it. In that black comedy is just very, very twisted and demented humor. It's a very, very horror-based comedy movie rather than a comedy-based horror movie. But I did enjoy the movie very much. I was very glad to go see it. I was not disappointed personally because I knew that it wasn't going to be something like Get Out. Like I said, I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. I think a lot of people who are dedicated horror fans would enjoy it, and even people who are just fans of Jordan Peele's work, like people who have seen a lot of his show, Key and Peele, know that they did a lot of skits that involved horror movie tropes and even just normal everyday situations implemented into a horror movie setting, and I think that's how this movie really felt. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. 7.5 out of 10. I would recommend it to horror movie fans and to Jordan Peele fans alike. Getting into the spoilers of the movie, I think they actually did a very good job at not showing you what the movie was in the trailers. People understood that there were these doppelgangers that were coming and they were kind of invading, and the family was going to have to deal with them. But in the trailers, we never learned about what the tethered were in these doppelgangers were the government's attempt to clone the population. We never learn why they were invading the home. We never learn how long it goes on for. and how widespread of a situation it was. The trailers actually kind of made it seem like it was a very isolated situation to just this one family, and it wasn't. It turned out it was the whole war. It was the whole United States. Um, I think the design of the costumes for the tethered was pretty cool and identifiable. And like I said before, I think the performance of Lupita Nyong'o as the Shadow was awesome. I think her vocal control in that part was awesome. Um, I felt kind of bad because a lot of people were laughing at the fact that the other tethered didn't have the ability to speak, and it's like, well, they don't have the ability to speak because they've never spoken. Like, they never had a need to. They were mindless clones living underground who were consistently fed rabbit. Like, it just, it really. I wasn't very happy that a lot of people were laughing at some of the other characters in it because I think they were very well done. Awesome, awesome step in appearance by um, oh, who is it? It's Tim Heidecker in it. Yeah, it's Tim Heidecker. He does um, a great job in it as his character. There's a couple of good suspense moments and jump scares in it. Um, and like I said, I think at parts it feels a little too goofy, but I really do think that he did a good job at making a science fiction slasher. The twist at the end is like the twist at the end is kind of, I knew it was gonna come. I kind of knew that they were gonna be like, oh, the tethered and the normal version of Lupita Nyong'o's character got switched when they met each other back, in the 80s, and it's like, okay, that was kind of predictable. But most horror movies are pretty predictable, especially when you've seen a million hours of them. So overall, I enjoyed the movie. I was very happy to be able to see it and experience it, and I don't think that it puts any doubt on Jordan Peele's name, especially since Twilight Zone is currently running and it's actually really damn good. So I don't think this has a negative effect on him at all. I think a lot of people were unfair to the movie just with how high their expectations were, but at the end of the day, I think it did a very good job at what it set out to do, and I think it deserves a 7.5. I think that it was good at what it wanted to do, and it still made a few mistakes along the way.
Be gone, fuck!
My second review of this episode is going to be for the remake of Pet Semetary. I know a lot of people, and I actually had this debate for a while with my good friend Nick, and that they shouldn't have remade the movie. I was perfectly fine with it, especially after seeing the first trailers and the posters that we got for it. I very much enjoyed this movie. I think that they did an incredible job with it. I think that they do a good job of changing certain aspects of the story and including other parts that weren't in the original movie. I think the performances in it are great. I think that it was a little bit better of a showing of insanity by the lead actor in this movie than in the older version. I think they did a good job in scaring the shit out of people again with the Zelda storyline. Um, and I gave this movie an 8 out of 10. The only problem that I had with it was Jonathan Lithgow's performance as Judd, and I don't think that's on him as much as it's on the casting director of the movie. I don't think it was fair to ask him to do this part. I don't think he was built for it. But I think the movie did very well. I think that even though the movie had a big budget and was a mass Hollywood production, it doesn't feel like it. I think it still has that feeling that most independent horror movies do. And it's this constant battle between horror movies that have money behind them and don't, and like trying to prove that when you put a bunch of money behind a horror movie, it usually isn't as good. But I really did enjoy this movie. I think they did a lot of things very well. Not necessarily trying to get into any spoilers. Like I said, I gave it an 8 out of 10. I think that the hole put in the movie by the performance of Lithgow in the part really kind of was the only main thing that I could knock. Excuse me. Getting into a couple spoilers. I do like the switcheroo that they kind of pulled on us, although I don't like that they revealed that that was the switch in the trailers. In the trailer, he is seen standing with his wife and son and says, say hello to your daughter. And so it's kind of already said that the daughter is the one that gets brought back to life in this one instead of the son Gage. I wasn't a huge fan of that switch, but at the same time, I could understand it. Switching it to the daughter gives them the ability to have a villain that actually can speak. And they actually add depth to this villain a little more than they did in the original, in that this version of it almost is possessed and has abilities as well. And this version of the movie actually goes a little bit deeper into the idea of the Wendigo, which I'm actually going to talk about a little bit later, but you know, you never really see it, and so showing it in this situation with a movie that's definitely going to have a big audience is awesome. I enjoyed that they included that as part of it. There was also kind of a pretty cool moment too that in the movie, you know, the soil that they bury people in to bring them back to life is located on a native burial ground. And due to the times changing and us being the way we are and understanding the impact that things that we say have nowadays, I thought it was really cool that in the movie they never directly say the words Indian burial ground or refer to it as Indian land, but rather they refer to them as the tribes and the land of the tribes, or as natives. I think that that's a really important touch, and that it's cool that they kind of corrected that. But all in all, I think the movie was very good. I thoroughly enjoyed that they were able to make a successful remake with it, that they didn't ruin it, and I think it actually added a lot of elements and a lot of aspects to it that the original didn't have, that the original didn't necessarily bring to the table. I think a lot of the acting in the original was subpar, except for the character of Judd. And I think that they fixed a lot of things in this one. I think that if they had just casted someone else to play Judd, who had a little bit more of a serious tone to them and not as much of a comedic background, I think it would have worked a lot better. But at the end of the day, it doesn't take a whole bunch from the movie, and the movie is still very successful. And I think it's going to take its place in this wave of modern horror movies that are kind of bringing back the idea of horror blockbusters to Hollywood. I mean, the combination of this and of Us and It and Get Out and all of these new wave horror movies that are coming through that are making good money at the box office, I think that's kind of showing people, hey, it's back. Like, horror is officially back, and it's not going to go away. Like, it's going to keep its place in the theater, and it's going to continue to succeed, and it's going to push the continue to push the forefront of like where the borders and the barriers that they have on this genre are. So 8 out of 10, and I definitely recommend it to any Stephen King fan and any horror fan in general, and even just moviegoers. I think it's a really good movie, and I think a lot of people would enjoy it if they took the time to go see it. Alright, now comes how I like to wrap up every episode that I record. I usually try to end episodes with a 5 for 5. So this episode, I wanted to kind of look at what Hollywood has done and what television has done as well, and really think, what monsters haven't we seen enough of? What monsters deserve a bigger chance than they've gotten? So I made my 5 for 5 underrepresented monsters in Hollywood. Number 5 that I wanted to bring up was the idea of a banshee. Now, I understand that Hollywood has plenty of ghost movies, that it's almost oversaturated with paranormal content. I get that. And a lot of that paranormal content is directly associated with poltergeists, because a lot of people don't understand that there's different classifications for ghosts and spirits and stuff like that. And I think a lot of the horror that we get nowadays is centered around poltergeist activity. I would actually like to see, not necessarily a big budget, but a big scale movie that focuses a little bit more on the lore of a banshee. Banshees were very protective spirits. They were kind of death warning spirits. They were assigned a family to guard or to warn over when their death was coming. Um, and also, at the same time, to people who weren't within the family they were protecting, they were scary as shit. I mean, just this everlasting wail that just pierces your eardrums and just scrambles your brain. And I mean, I think that there's so many different layers to this specific form of spirit that it really should have. We should get a better look at it, and I think it would be really cool to be able to even do like a past, like in the past, like medieval times, Celtic, and Western European central movie about the lore of a banshee and about how do banshees come about, what are banshees, what are their purpose. I really do think that there's not a whole lot about them in most situations. I mean, shows like Supernatural definitely cover them because they have so much content within them, and there have been really, really shitty Sci-Fi Channel original spin-offs. One of the most memorable ones for me and my family is Scream of the Banshee, as my mom and I watched that as it premiered and continued to sit and laugh at how just absolutely fucking horrible it was. But I think that it needs a chance. I think that they really could play around a lot with the lore of a banshee, and I think that they could make a movie that could take another shot at the Academy with it too. I mean, if you focus on the ideas that banshees are such death harbingers and protectors of families and stuff like that, I think they could really play into that very well. Going on to my number 4 is not something that a lot of people understand as a concept, but my number 4 underrepresented monster in Hollywood is a non-Strigoi vampire. So what most people don't realize is that the common vampire that you think of, with the fangs and the thirst for blood, but still the appearance of a human, the inability to go out in the light, those are common to what are known as Strigoi, which are a section of vampires. There is an idea of a vampire that is not as charming, does not have the sexual aspect that our modern vampires do. These creatures are very much more of humans almost turning into bat-like creatures rather than the ability to turn into a bat and back into a human. The only representation that I've seen of this is through one of my favorite television shows of all time, which was Animal Planet's Lost Tapes, which ran back in the late 2000s. The show was very cheesy and it was very over the top, and they had some factual basis. Well, not necessarily factual, but they had some basis for some of the episodes they made, and some of them were a stretch. But they did a vampire episode where these vampires were more animal than human, and I think it really stuck with me. I mean, I think it was a very well done episode, and it was possibly one of the best episodes they made because it actually was kind of scary. I mean, these things were just animalistic creatures that were living in like a nest, sort of, in this person's home. So I think there's definitely a market for this idea to come to life in Hollywood. I think people, because of the Twilight saga and Vampire Diaries and things, I do think that there may soon be a burnout on the idea of a human based, sexual vampire. I think people are kind of done with that idea and would like the character to become scary again. So I think this would be the direction that they should go if they want to bring the vampire back into horror. And I would really like to see how they would do it. I'd really like to see their execution of it and how they really explain that there is a difference in these two beings. Number 3 is another one that most people don't know about, and it is an underrepresented monster called the Jersey Devil. The Jersey Devil, the lore of it takes, of course, place in New Jersey, and that there was a woman who was practicing witchcraft, I believe, and her son ended up cursed and just ended up being this monstrosity that was a combination of like a donkey and a bull and a bat, and the best description for it was demonic, was a devil. um Again, the only source of representation that I have seen for it is from that Animal Planet show, Lost Tapes. They have an episode for the Jersey Devil. And I think that that is such a definite, like, it's such a unique combination, and it would be such a monstrosity on camera that I think they could really do well with it. I think they could really run with it if they wanted to. Just to kind of be able to see some designs, even from major production studios, would be good enough for me. I mean, I would just even want to see their promo art just to kind of know what direction they're going in with it. I think it has a lot of room to play around with prosthetics as well as CGI. I think it would be a good design for them to be able to experiment with either. And they can definitely play into the whole cursed aspect of it as well, and really kind of bring home the whole lore of the monster. So I would love to see something done with a Jersey Devil as a main as the main monster in the film. My number two underrepresented monster is probably going to take a lot of people convincing because of just how much they know about them. And I actually put werewolves as my number two underrepresented monster because while werewolves have plenty of movies, I don't think that those movies were given fair shots in Hollywood. You have the original Wolfman, you have a Wolfman remake, you have The Howling, you have American Werewolf in London, you have Ginger Snaps. But then in the modern era, since 2000, the only representation that you really have for werewolves is that Wolfman remake from 2011 with Benicio del Toro, and you have the werewolves that are present in the Twilight Saga. And I think that that's kind of bullshit, because I think werewolves are an awesome part of like monster lore and mythology. I think that they are definitely one of the prime players in it, and I think that they need to be at the forefront a little bit more. I did love the Lycans, which are like an offshoot of werewolves in the Underworld franchise. I think those were awesome. I think those were a good representation of them. I think they looked good on screen, and I would have liked to see more of them. But I think that we need to get back to werewolves being at the forefront of horror, because I think it's a super awesome character. There's so many different aspects of it, and like werewolves are so symbolic of internal struggles that we have as humans. I mean, it's the whole idea that in every human there's a monster present, and you just need the right situation to bring it out. I think that it's time for us to reopen the werewolf chapter in Hollywood, because, I mean, yeah, there are a lot of really bad werewolf movies, but there's a lot of really good ones. I mean, American Werewolf in London changed the entire scene for practical effects and really broke a lot of ground in that area for horror movies. So I think that we really kind of need to shift a lot of focus back towards it, just to really kind of pick things up again, and really give Hollywood a fresh idea, because we've seen plenty of zombies, we've seen plenty of vampires. We're getting a healthy dose of radioactive monsters now that Godzilla and King Kong have been brought back. We've seen all the slasher stuff. I mean, we just need something new, and we need something fresh, and I think that werewolves would be it, because we haven't seen very many in the modern era. Honorable mentions. It was kind of difficult to put together a long list of these, because I think that everything sees its representation at some point, and I think that some things, while they may be underrepresented, they may be rightfully so, because it's difficult to make full-scale movies about them. I wanted to say sewer gators. I love the idea of alligators being in the sewers of big cities. I don't necessarily want to say directly poltergeist, because that's what a lot of generically labeled ghost movies are now, are poltergeist movies. I'd like to see some lore about Will-O'-the-Wisps, though. I would love to see something involving jack-o'-lanterns and maybe a headless horseman in a modern era. I mean, I know that we had Sleepy Hollow as a TV show on Fox, but I would love to really kind of dive into that. Um, so it was kind of difficult to really kind of pinpoint things that I felt were underrepresented and in an unjust way that I thought should have garnered more attention. Um, but getting into my number one underrepresented monster in Hollywood, I actually spoke about it earlier in my Pet Semetary review, and it's the Wendigo. I think the Wendigo is such an insane idea that Hollywood is just continually neglecting. I mean, you're talking about that the lore behind this creature is that it is a man who loses his mind so bad, most are cannibalistic, that they begin to almost morph into these demonic beings that become representations and harbingers of death. I mean, these are people that have just snapped so badly with their infatuation of death or of riches or of, just anything, that the world order punishes them by morphing them into these hideous creatures. I definitely think that it could be the basis of great movies. I think that their designs are intimidating and just overbearing and so ominous that, like, being able to successfully depict one on screen would just be so memorable, and it would just really drive home and scare the shit out of people, because most people don't know what it is. Most people don't know very much about native lore and native folk tales, and they would not know what this thing is, and they would want to figure out more about it. And I think that if you really gave it the time and you really gave it the effort, a good Wendigo movie could scare the shit out of everyone. And I was very happy that it was that the idea of it was included in Pet Sematary, but for me that's not enough. The only other situation that I've heard it spoken about before is, as with multiple others on this list, is that there was a Lost Tapes episode for it. But I don't think that's enough. I think we really need to push this. I think we need multiple full-length feature movies that really include this monster, just to show like how scary it is, and just to show the downfall of man and the ideas of greed and just how soon we can lose everything and just devolve. So I think that the Wendigo is my most underrepresented horror movie monster in Hollywood today.
Pizza time.
Alright, so that's it for this week's episode of the podcast. Like I said, I am going to see Endgame tomorrow, the day after I'm recording this episode. I will be attempting to record an immediate reaction within an hour or two after I leave the theater. We'll possibly have a couple close friends in on that reaction. I had a couple close friends go with me to see Shazam as well, so I might be able to get them to hop in on my review of that. But my two current movies that I'm lining up for next week are Shazam and Endgame. As always, if you like what you heard, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. Let me know suggestions of things you want me to review, things you want me to cover, any ideas for 5 for 5 lists that you guys have, and thanks for listening.